Another Monday, and time now for Ask Mike, the final one before an Arkansas football game of the 2025 season. It is finally here. The finale going down on Saturday against Missouri inside Razorback Stadium. Mike, the time has come. How disappointing has this year been if you are an Arkansas Razorback fan?
Well, it's huge. And, I was wrong. I thought they might win 7 games. They looked to be a little bit better on paper than they were last year when they won 7 games. But there were people that said, no, this is going to be bad, and give them credit, they were right. I admit I was wrong. There were a lot of things that went wrong, and it was a really bad, and it gets worse. I mean, that's the thing, it really gets worse because this game was not close. Not in the fourth quarter.
It really wasn't.
Not in the fourth quarter.
They had the 2 by the way, touchdowns there that made it look a little bit better.
Made it look better, but so, and look, it can still get worse. If you get blown out by Missouri at home, that's not going to be good either. So yeah, they got one more shot to kind of at least give somebody a chance to think something good about this team.
Evan and I were in Austin, and we were talking after the game. You know, to me, Bobby Petrino, nothing ever done without a purpose. For him to, call out some attitude, call out some effort. What do you feel the motivation is behind that?
Well, I think he noticed it. I think until now, I guess he felt like everybody was giving effort. If they didn't play well, it was because we don't have talent, especially on the defensive side. But I saw it. I think you could see it, especially on a lot of people thought it was he was talking about Taylor Green. I'm not necessarily. He was mad at him, but I felt like he probably was looking at the secondary. The secondary hasn't looked that bad in a while. There were guys wide open. And
it's not like they were just getting beat by Spin.
There was poor tackling on the pass. They had. They had Arch Manning back sacked 2 or 3 times, and he just broke off, and it's like we can't tackle the guy.
Yeah. All right, diving into our questions here, the final edition of Ask Mike before an Arkansas football game. First question here coming from Mark Jones, who asked, why did it take Petrino almost 2 complete seasons to realize that Taylor Green's mistakes keep costing us game after game? His talent is obvious to see. His bad decision-making is also obvious.
I think he was always trying to win games, and as long as it's close in the fourth quarter, as long as you have a chance, I don't think you're going to bring somebody in that you don't know how they'll do.
Yeah.
And I think it's no secret to me why he played K.J. Jackson in this game. It reached a point where it was, you're not going to win it, so yeah, then you can bring him in. And I think he probably would have played earlier if some of these earlier games had been a blowout. So I think that's the main reason. If you put yourself in Petrino's mind, he's still probably thinking all the way up to maybe the Texas game. If we win this game, if we beat Missouri, I might get this.
I'm on a high note.
Yeah, I might get this job. Who knows what's going on with the job search? So you can't really fault him for going with what he knows. I'm sure he was frustrated. And again, as we just said, there was one time in particular, he came out there and you could hear what he was saying on the mic at home, and he was basically saying, "How did you manage to blank that formation up?" And so it was clearly a problem with Green. So he's frustrated there. But again, when you watch him, this will always be a huge question in my mind thinking back on this kid. And we don't know what he's going to do. Some people think he'll get a shot in the NFL and be great with better coaching or whatever. My own opinion is if he ever plays in the NFL, I think he's going to have to change positions because I don't think he can process decisions quick enough. A quarterback is unlike any other guy on the field in that he's got to process a whole lot of stuff in a hurry. And the good ones are good at that. It's almost instinct. And I don't think he has that instinct. But I think Petrino almost to the end kept thinking, hey, he'll come through. And it just seemed to me that maybe toward the end of games he got fatigued. And sometimes physical fatigue can cause mental fatigue. And maybe that's what was happening in the fourth quarter when he made so many mistakes. I don't know.
Or you wonder if he just felt the pressure. Petrino had a comment on Monday at a press conference. Kind of excusing some blame from Taylor. And it's like, hey, when our offense takes the field, there was pressure. They felt like the way things were going defensively, they had to score every single time they were on the field.
And that's tough.
And I think that showed against Notre Dame. They pressed a little bit, and it it kind of showed again against Texas whenever there were some moments there where it started to get away from the NFL future there. I think it was Booger McFarland over the weekend that was saying he felt like Talon could have a higher ceiling in the NFL than he had in college. I'm kind of with you. I think in the NFL, if you can't process, it happens so much faster.
So much.
And the windows are so much tighter. So it's, the mistakes are amplified even that much.
I don't know
more
if he can catch the football. He's tall, he's fast. You would think he'd be a good
He looks
receiver.
like Vince Young. He really does.
Or maybe they could put weight on him and turn him into a tight end. Who knows?
He's athletic enough to do just about anything. I think, if he wanted to be in track and field and basketball, whatever, football, whatever it may be, he was going to excel at. He's that athletic. Unfortunately, though, whenever these games have really gotten tight in crunch time, Talon has not quite been at his best. It's been great most of the year, but whenever it matters in some pressure spots, he has struggled to deliver. Next question here coming from Just Win, who wants to know, do you think Arkansas could have won a game or two if KJ Jackson had been the quarterback? From what I saw against Texas, he's not as flashy as Green, but he seems to be better under pressure. Now, in fairness to Talon Green, it was a much, much different game when KJ Jackson came in. But play a little bit more free. Texas had, and parenthetically here, basically stopped caring.
Yeah,
it was a little bit different.
I think he did face Texas one defense for a while, but then once we got later on, they brought their twos in there. But even if you're facing their ones, they're playing looser. They're not, there's no urgency there. So it's really hard to compare. But I did see something. Now, the one turnover he had, I don't see that there's a solution for that. He got blindsided from the rear and just taken down, and he fumbled. And that's going to happen with just about anybody. So I don't fault him for that. What I saw a lot of times was him making quick decisions like we were talking about when he's about to be sacked and right before he's just what I felt like from watching him was that he understood each play and he knew where his options were. And I sometimes think Talon Green gets confused about his options because he seemed to know every time they were about to sack him, he seemed to know where he goes next. And he was pretty good at that. Different kind of runner, not a speed runner, more of a power runner, a physical runner. But again,
great touchdown run.
Yeah,
bouncing off tackles, and maintain his balance through contact.
I caught his show last night. By the way, they still call it the Sam Pittman Show. Isn't that bizarre?
I haven't necessarily seen the show, but I've seen it on the bottom line. I wonder if that's just like a Cox thing or a YouTube TV thing, whatever.
It's
but I did notice that, yes.
It's a little strange. But when Petrino was describing that run, the thing I always liked about Bobby, even when he was here before, when he does a show, he's passing his knowledge on to you, the viewer. He's explaining every single thing that's going on with that play. And he said, well, he was supposed to do this, and he didn't see it, but then he made up for it by doing this, and then he went around this tackle, and he just described the whole thing and seemed to be happy with, the decision. But apparently, even KJ Jackson, there were some things he was supposed to do that he didn't do, but he seemed to be able to overcome it. So I don't know. It's hard to say if they would have won a game or two. We'll never know.
Yeah, so we obviously can't predict what's going to happen with the coaching search, who's going to be next or whatever. But, do you anticipate that KJ Jackson is going to be the quarterback for Arkansas next year? Again, there's so much to consider. If it's an air raid guy, is that who they want? Or like a super spread quarterback? Or maybe they want a more... So many variables, but just if you had to take a guess, do you think there's enough talent there where a coach will really want to sink his teeth into KJ?
Somebody made the suggestion to me that they might not want to show him off because all that's going to happen is another team's going to pick him off that needs him. So keep him under wraps. Well, who cares? I don't know who we're talking about here. But Ailey, we were talking to her just a minute ago, and she knows some people that go to his church, and they said he's committed. He wants to come back. So the issue would be, you're going to get interviewed. The new coach is going to come in, and he's going to sit down. He's probably going to look at video, be familiar with what you did, and then he's going to have to make a decision. Do you fit into our offense? But he's good enough. I cannot imagine any coach coming in here and saying, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he'll win the job, and he might ask questions and get the impression, well, I'm bringing a quarterback with me, so you're going to start off number 2, and then he might leave.
Now, so football coaches are very set in their ways. All of them have their own, kind of habits, their traditions, whatever. You got any problem? I know you're an old school guy too. You got any problem with him being a lefty? Your offensive line's flipped, your offense is flipped. Some coaches don't necessarily want to deal with it. Doesn't mean they won't, just means they don't really like to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, but I understand what you're talking about. If I had to coach.
You got your left tackle on the right side, all that kind of thing.
That might be a factor. You might say, whoa, I'd just as soon not have a left-handed quarterback. But there's enough of them out there that apparently is not an insurmountable issue.
And there's been some great ones in the NFL, certainly. I think 2 of them in the Hall of Fame. Steve Young and Kenny Stabler, maybe. Whatever. That's more of a question for Mike Irwin. Next question here coming from Jamie Hogg, who says, Bobby said for the first time he saw some players who were not giving their best effort. Was he talking about his quarterback who he benched?
Possibly. I do sense, again, some frustration there. But I think he was mad at more than just.
It looked like on that interception, he kind of pressed. He just panicked. Yeah. I don't think it was necessarily not caring.
Yeah, not giving effort. Apparently that pass was supposed to go to his tight end who was out. He said the tight end was out of position. But what Bobby's point was, you don't throw it to him in that. When you look and you see he's not where he's supposed to do, you just take the ball and go down or try to run a little bit with it. Don't panic and just throw it out there anyway. Whether he was mad at him for that, and this is what he was talking. Again, I got the impression that it was more than just one player that he was upset with when he talked about guys not giving effort and guys giving up. Look, when you get close to the end of the season and you know that your coaches aren't going to be here, here's what a lot of those guys are figuring. I'm not going to be here either.
Substitute teacher, the whole thing there.
So it's very easy to kind of go, what the heck's going on here? I'm not going to be here. They're not going to be here. Even if it's psychological, it's easy to not give the kind of effort that you had been giving.
And I don't want to make excuses for them, but it's human nature. The message keeps on being pounded home week after week after week from the coaches. And when the message doesn't work and the tactic doesn't work, well, what do you think's going to happen? We've lost 9 straight games. We feel like we're doing what you're telling us to do, and we're not getting the results.
It's not working.
So now it's almost not on us. It's on you guys.
Yeah, it's very tough. When I was in high school, my senior year, I played on a team like that. We only won 3 games. We never got blown out. We lost a bunch of games that we could have won. And I'm one of the captains, and you have to try and keep everybody going. But we won our last 3 games after having all these frustrations. And I can tell you that when we still have reunions, the upperclassmen on that team always talk about that with pride because they said, we could have just given up and we didn't do it. And I never forget this. We in our last game, we not only won it, we were blowing this team out. We were up 44-16, and we wanted to score 50. That's what was in my mind. And I was an offensive lineman, if you can believe that. But one of the running backs said, hey, Irwin, he said, look, let's switch positions. He said, you take my spot, and I'll take your spot, and I'll block for you, and maybe you'll score a touchdown. I said, come on. I'm not going to score. I said, you stay back there, and we'll try to score 50 on them. When you get in a game like that and you're finally having fun after all that frustration, what I'm trying to say is, even if you've had a bad season, if you're out there on that field and you put in all that effort all year long, you can still have fun toward the end of the year if you're winning. And this team's not, so I don't know what they do.
Guys, go out one last time. Saturday, Razorback Stadium. I'm sure a lot of people that are nostalgic about Bobby Petrino, they're going to show up. There's going to be a whole lot of support. There's going to be a lot of families in town for Senior Day. There's still a lot of die-hard Razorback fans out there. You got one final time to go make it happen, to have some fun, hopefully end on a high note. All right, just getting started here on Ask Mike. We're back with more after a timeout. Back here on Ask Mike, it's time now for more of your questions. Diving back into it here. Horns Down from Ashdown says they finally lost a game that was not close. Of course, it happened against Texas, but why? I'd say the easiest answer is because of talent.
I don't think you were here when we did the PTN Extra on Wednesday, and I did it with Evan. Mm-hmm. No, Evan wasn't here, was it? Hayden was here. That's right. I'm getting mixed up.
It's all good. It's been a long season, Mike. It's been a long season.
But what I said was, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I said they do not match up well with Texas. More than any other team they played this year, this defense is better. It was the third-ranked defense in the SEC, and their pass rush was good. And I said, what is Taylor Green not good at when people put the heat on him? And they're also a good run-stop defense. So I just think they're in a position to limit Arkansas offensively. Now, Arkansas still scored a lot of points in that game, so the offense was better than I thought it would be. What I didn't anticipate completely, but what I did say was that when Arch Manning gets in trouble, it's because you sack him and you hit him and you drive him to the ground. He tends to come unglued. I've seen it happen too many times.
Hit the quarterback, the whole team feels it.
That's right. But they didn't do that. This was not what Arkansas does. I'll never understand, as long as I live, why there weren't more blitz packages this year. What do you got to lose? I understand what you're saying. They could beat us deep. You just got to trust your secondary. You got to go after the guy. And they didn't. And I felt like they were going to put no pressure on him. And then what happened was that even when they got to him 2 or 3 times, they couldn't tackle him.
Well, nobody's generated pressure this year outside of Quincy Rhodes. And
That's
I even
right.
go back to the Ole Miss game. I don't know if you remember this. So Trinidad Chambliss, who has now become their starter, was Austin Simmons, who was on one leg, couldn't move. They're around the goal line. I don't know if you remember this specifically. Right. They brought the house. They brought 8 guys on a quarterback that could not walk, and they still couldn't get to him.
Still couldn't get
I don't know if that's a talent thing, scheme thing, a care thing, both. More than anything, I'd say it's probably that they just don't have the guys to generate the pressure.
Well, that's why I didn't feel like the game would be close, because I thought Arch Manning would have a good game because we wouldn't do things to make him have a bad game. I did not anticipate him having his best game ever. And now he's on a roll.
6 touchdowns.
Because he's had 2 or 3 games now where he's bounced back. So, and I know we were talking about it, you think they have a good chance to beat A&M. If they beat A&M and he plays well in that game, they could be in the playoffs, and then suddenly Arch is because I'm telling you, I heard some talk last week that he might be interested in transferring to Tennessee. You know, his uncle might have convinced him, hey, you know, we'll take you at Tennessee. These Texas people don't appreciate you. Well, I don't think there's any danger of that now because he's on a roll, unless A&M figures out a way to get to him.
Austin's a cool place. He's got a good thing going there. We were down on the field after the game, and he's getting mobbed. His production hasn't been there, but he is a celebrity quarterback,
Yeah,
you know, akin to a Johnny Manziel or a Baker Mayfield. You know, he's in that kind of mold. Dare I even say, with the pedigree and the name and the brand recognition he's had dating back to high school, he'd probably even bigger than those guys. All right, next question here coming from Hog Redneck, who asks, who is your favorite player for this year? Mine is Mike Washington. He made some mistakes, but if every kid on the team was as tough as he is, we'd be going to a bowl game.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I'd really have to think about it, but I like him. I've always heard this whole year that he came in here and really adapted to what Arkansas is, what Fayetteville is, what the culture is, and you can't say that about some of those guys that came in as transfers. So he knew he was coming in here for 1 year, and he was not a big name when he came here. And we remember last spring is when we started watching him, and we're going, whoa, you know, look at this guy. And then I thought, well, you know, it's spring, what, that didn't mean anything. And then in fall camp, he was looking good. And here's the thing I like about him. We had all these injuries this year. When was he injured? Where he sat over there on the bench. He might have gone to the tent 2 or 3 times like he did in this game.
Yeah, just didn't against Texas.
But he's back out there. You know, I don't know if they inject him with something, a pain, deadener, or whatever, but he's back out there again. I like the way he just fought off injuries. He averaged 6.5 yards a carry, had about 1,050 yards. He had more yards rushing than anybody on the team. Taylor Green had about 900. He only lost about 30 yards, 40 yards in losses with that many carries. So it's just those fumbles. He had 2 or 3 fumbles that were pretty key, but I like him. I wish he was coming back. I think he could help this team next year.
We never had this discussion on Taylor Green as, you know, KJ Jackson and who's going to get to play. What are you expecting on Saturday? Who's going to be out there to start the game?
Again, I don't think there's any reason. I personally, I don't know this is what would, Bobby Petrino said in his Monday press conference it's 50-50. He's just going to judge them based on practice.
Uh-huh.
I would like to see KJ Jackson get the game from the start. He starts the game. It's his game. Again, when you come in the fourth quarter, it's not the same thing. So this is what we don't know. And so from a fan standpoint, I can see why Petrino didn't care about that. He's probably not going to be here.
If I may, though, you're 2-9. Taylon's been here for 2 years.
Yeah.
Poured his heart into it, played through some injuries. It's senior day. Should they take that away from him?
Maybe not. I would.
You would?
I'm bloodthirsty. Yeah, I want him to win. And I want to see him and see what he can do. Even if you bring him in the second quarter, it's not the same thing as saying, this is your game. Let's see what you can do when the game starts. But I would expect Taylor Green to start. I think he will.
Do you think there's any chance Bobby Petrino could be back here as an offensive coordinator? And when I say any chance, like call it 2, 3, 5%, which even if it's 5%, that's 1 in 20. You know, keep those odds in mind. That's really, really low. Kane Womack, you know, the Arkansas guy, that one of the top assistants in the country, probably going to be, you know, at least a finalist for the Broyles Award or a semifinalist, however that all shakes out. You know, he's a defensive guy. Could there be an interest in retaining Bobby Petrino?
That's possible.
I'd say unlikely, correct?
That's possible. What I've been told by people that claim to know, and I don't claim this, so they're telling me, is that Petrino has indicated that if he's not the head coach, he's moving on. He's going to go somewhere else. Now, I don't know if that means he wants to go be a coordinator somewhere else. I'm just guessing here. We've talked about the fact that he wanted to come back here and atone for what he did the last time. I want to make up for it. He's even talked about it recently. I think he's now resigned to the fact that he gave it his best effort, didn't work. Now I can move on. It may even be a catharsis for him. He may have wanted all these years to try and come back here and do that. So he tried it, and it didn't work, but you get it out of your system. You don't think about it anymore. This could be a release for him. He might go on to become a head coach somewhere else. I don't know.
I don't think he's going to be a head coach anywhere else, just given the situation. For no other than where he's at with his age. And
I mean, there's so many jobs out there. Who would have thought Art Briles? And the Art Briles.
It's Division II football in New Mexico.
I realize it. Let me tell you something. My older cousin went to school there, and we played against. That's in Portales, New Mexico. We called them portals because that's the way it's spelled, Portales. And we'd get out on the field against those guys and go, hey, portals, and they go, shut up. And it was really funny because you go over to New Mexico, they had a different way of doing things. Their field is weird. It's less wide, but it was longer. And we couldn't get used to that. The coaches would tell us all these new wacky rules, and they had some rules that didn't apply in Texas. And so the coaches would say, there's no excuse for you getting over there and not knowing the rules. And so we always had to go to class before we played portals every year. But now he's there. Now, I was reading some of the comments because, I mean, this stuff doesn't go away. And, oh, man, he was getting blasted by some of the students, some of the women on campus are going, I'm embarrassed that this guy is our coach. What are you doing? I mean, he may not last. They may double think that and go, I guess we shouldn't have him here. I don't know.
And Mike Irwin, maybe more of an 8-man football kind of guy. Some obscurity there in Texas and in New Mexico. All right, next question here coming from Sherlock Hogg, who says, I still feel that we are so close to getting over the hump with Bobby. We have been in every game. If we can just get some legit defensive transfers, a quarterback with a killer instinct, and a defensive coordinator, I feel that we can be legit next year. Mike Irwin, what says you?
Oh, I don't know. I think we just have enough to know. I mean, what are we talking about here? 6 games now, and you still think, oh, if we could just do this or we could do that, it would be different. I said this last week.
The defense was that was bad. That wasn't Notre Dame bad, but it was close against Texas.
But I just think that people remember him from 09, 010, 011, or 11. And I think they think that can happen
hard to
again.
let go.
And it's just not the same game, I don't think. He's the same. That's almost like talking about Malzahn, because there's been a lot of talk about Malzahn coming back here. Same issue. Gus Malzahn's best years as a coach are behind him. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, but when
offensive coordinator on what, a 6-6 team right now?
And you're going, well, you know, you slowly went downhill at Auburn, and then you went to UCF, and you got out of there, and then now you're.
And quite frankly, left UCF before they could fire him.
Yeah,
it wasn't going
before
well.
he got fired, and I think he said something about he was only going to Florida State for 1 year. And then what was his plan next? Is he going to be a head coach again? Well, I don't think so, based on what happens this year. So it's the same thing with Petrino. I just think his best years are behind him. But people want to believe that he can do that here.
Why do you think that is? I think it's because he wasn't fired for football reasons. It's everybody else, you know, Bielema, John L. Smith, Chad Morris, Sam Pittman. They were fired because of performance. He was fired for something else.
Yeah, and that could be it. That's probably it. They just there were people that didn't want him fired when he got fired. They went, well, okay, if he'll just apologize.
They had no choice.
Well, they don't realize that they gave him some chances and he didn't take it, and that's why he was so mad at himself later on. He admitted that he got his ego went nuts, and all of that. So again, he's had his shot. I don't see it. I don't think if they brought him back next year and let him run the show in the offseason, it would be any different. Now, they might win more than 2 games. I don't know about that because I think he would probably figure out a way to get the defense better. But I don't think it would be anything that would keep him around here.
Yeah, just the reality is, and I think Bobby's had a great attitude. He's been really good with the media. He's been very appreciative and everything. But the reality is since he lost Lamar Jackson, so it was 2016, 2017 was the next year. They went 2-8. He lost his job, was barely above 500 at Missouri State, now 0-6 at Arkansas. He's below 500 since he lost Lamar Jackson.
And when he was
that was a long time ago.
When he was at A&M as the offensive coordinator.
I think they were 7-5.
Yeah,
and they had the money they had. They had the number one NIL budget in the country.
His coach got fired. So
are you with me on this? Have you processed some of I like to call them verbal breadcrumbs from Petrino? Picked up on something a week ago. Well, hey, the data and the analytics say we should have won 4 games. We've lost all 5, but the data says that. And then today, I don't know if you picked up on what he said. He's like, it's really hard. It's not my team. Wasn't my coaching staff. It's a hard time. It's almost like he's trying to create an alibi. Did you pick up on that at all?
I think he's telling himself I can still coach, which tells me he's going somewhere. Yeah. I just don't know where. And it could be here. I'm not saying it's impossible.
You agree, long shot though, right? That's what I feel.
Well, I don't know what Womack would say if he's the guy. I don't know what his attitude would be, but it's possible. And they could have reached out to some people with the idea of, hey, if you're a defensive coach, I mean, I don't know. We're still talking about Campbell at Iowa State. Maybe they reached out to him and said, hey, we've got a really good offensive coordinator. You're a defensive guy. They could have talked to whoever it is and maybe got some sort of an indication. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I would consider it kind of not likely.
I definitely think it's absolutely a long shot. And, look what happened even here with Sam. When Bobby came on, there was a lot of people that were just counting down. Man, when's Sam getting pushed out? Bobby Petrino's going to be the head coach.
Exactly.
That's hard for a head coach to deal with. That's really not a mess that you want to step into.
Yep.
A lot more to get to here on Ask Mike after a quick timeout. Back here on Ask Mike, diving into some more of your questions here with Mike Irwin. Next question here coming from No to Gus, who asks, is Yurachek seriously considering Malzahn? He's the offensive coordinator on a losing football team with a 2-6 conference record. In 3 of their last 5 games, Florida State has scored 13 points, 10 points, 11 points. He doesn't compare to Petrino. Hey, glass half full here. When's the last time Arkansas beat Alabama? Gus, he has Alabama's number. Did it at Florida State, and since Saban joined the SEC, nobody beat Alabama more than Gus Malzahn.
There are people that probably hope it's him. But there are a lot of people that hope it's not.
Polarizing, right?
It's very polarizing.
People that are ride or die, and others that are like
some of it goes back to that 06 season when all that controversy was going on and people took sides. It's Nutt, no, it's Gus. But some of it also has to do with
2018. He used us.
He used Arkansas to get a better situation for him. And he had convinced some very strong supporters, some pretty powerful boosters. They got together and generated a $7 million a year, 7-year contract. $7 million back then is about like 12 now.
Yeah.
That was huge. And that's what Jimmy Sexton said it would take. So they negotiated, they figured out a way to make it happen, and then when they presented it to Sexton, it took about 6 hours, and they found out, well, sorry, Auburn's decided to give him the same thing. He's going to stay. And so when people really sunk in that he really would rather be at Auburn, if all of the things are equal, then I think they had a different attitude toward him, because I think the belief was always, well, Jeff Long didn't give him a shot. If Jeff Long had really considered him when he hired Bielema, he would be good. Gus would be it. He didn't get treated fairly by Nutt, all this stuff. But now you get hit with reality, which is this guy's ambitious just like anybody else, and Auburn is a better program than Arkansas is. It's easier to recruit there. You've got a better chance of winning a conference title. He almost won a national championship there.
Yeah.
He got to the championship
Right to the
game.
final minute, really.
Yes. So I don't blame him for doing that. But what I am saying is I think some people woke up and realized, whoa, he's not this guy that he's not a Sam Pittman. I always wanted to be there. And that's overrated anyway. You can say that, but if you don't win, what difference does that make? Now, what I was told was that a supporter of his with a lot of money went to the people in the chancellor's office or somebody close to that and went, hey, maybe even Yurichek, I'm not sure, but they went, hey, I give you a lot of money. You give him an interview. You talk to him. We're not going to insult him like this, because he reached out, and so they gave him the interview. I still think it was a courtesy interview.
And they've interviewed multiple people,
yeah,
and at all levels.
Yes.
More qualified than Gus, less qualified than
According
Gus.
to some, over 20 people have been interviewed. So
it's been a very extensive and quite frankly exhaustive search. Next question here coming from Hill Country Hog, who asks, this coaching search has degenerated into chaos. I don't know who to believe. Matt Campbell, Eric Morris, Golish, Kingsbury, Womack. Seriously, an announcement is imminent. Fire Yurichek.
Well, I will say that he's kept this thing confusing. There are people that say that that there's never been a search that's been that kept everything quiet. Now, look, yesterday the whole thing broke open again because there was a report on the internet that it was about to happen, and people went bonkers. And for a period of about 30 minutes, it looked like there might be an announcement.
And Brandon Marcello, national reporter, who is as plugged in as anybody in the sport, probably except for Pete Thamel, said that in the next 2 days, probably going to hear something.
First, he put a graphic up that said that there's a new sheriff in town, and so people thought, okay, it's happening.
Peyton Manning, nicknamed the sheriff, by the way.
And then we started hearing all kinds of things, and other people started weighing in. And so now you've got people saying that there's so many levels to this. There's the mysterious person out there that's never been talked about. That's still out there. There are still people that swear there's a name that's never been mentioned, and when it comes out, you're just going to be, oh, wow.
And 50% of the time, that is how this goes.
Yeah.
Much like when they hired Bobby Petrino in 2008, and much like when they hired Brett Bielema in 2012.
So we'll see if that's the way. But I'm still not sure where the Matt Campbell thing came from, but everybody started talking about it.
I think it was a message board, quite frankly.
A
lot of rumors come from
everybody's talking about it. And I said last week, there's nothing. I studied his history. He had a chance to come here before Pittman was hired. He didn't even interview. He declined to interview. He makes $4 million a year. His agent is not Jimmy Sexton. Because if Jimmy Sexton was his agent, he wouldn't be making $4 million a year with his record over 10 years there. He's had 2 Big 12 titles. He's only had 1 really bad year, and I think that's when he started his first year. I mean, he's had success there.
They were a 4th quarter away from the college ball playoff just last year
Yes.
at Iowa State. This is not, some Big 12 power.
Exactly. So it just didn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, again, I can't remember where I saw this. I think it was on one of these message board, a message board that does Iowa State. They said that he turned down the USC job when Lincoln Riley ended up getting it. Maybe not. I don't know about that. But it didn't. And I saw a podcast of these two guys that cover Iowa State, and they said this doesn't make any sense to us. But they acknowledge that it's out there and it's pretty strong, and they weren't sure where that was coming from. And I was confused until a guy on Hogville put up a post, a link to an online newspaper article. It was one of the bigger newspapers in Iowa, and they detailed that Iowa State has major financial issues with their athletic department. They had to go to apparently the school has a fund for academics, a foundation for academics. They had to borrow $27 million from that fund to meet their budget for this 26th season that's coming up. But they said this is a one-time only thing. You got to figure it out next time around. So if they don't figure out a way to come up with more money, they're going to have to make budget cuts. Well, if you got to make budget cuts, how are you going to meet your rev sharing cap? How are you going to do that?
Let alone pay a coach and a staff, et cetera.
So that might
and the third lane money. Don't forget about the third lane money. That's important.
Right. So that might be a reason why Campbell would leave. But as you pointed out, there's talk about him going to other places because
Penn State. Just from that part of the country.
Yeah,
it's a really good job.
Just because they're mentioning him here doesn't mean that's where he would end up if he left. So I'm still not sure about how I feel about that thing. But then you talk about, then there's these other things that ESPN, Pete Thamel is mentioning. And he's got the Golish, he's got the Morris, he's got the Summerall, the things.
Silverfield,
we've heard all of these. But then you've got these two coordinators. And what is it, Will Stein
at Oregon.
At Oregon, an offensive coordinator, and Womack, a defensive coordinator. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, wait a minute. If you're a head coach, and this is going to be announced midweek by Wednesday at the latest, which is what everybody was claiming, that doesn't seem very likely with a sitting head coach that's still got a game to play. And in Morris's case, he's probably going to be in the championship game of that conference and has an outside shot at the playoffs. So I can't see these guys being who we're talking about. So who are we left with? Coordinators. Coordinators can leave anytime they want to, and it's happened in the past. It's acceptable.
Lane Kiffin got let go, I think, 3 or 4 days for the national championship game.
Yes.
Back whenever he was at Alabama, because Saban thought he was distracted. He was like, get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. So it can happen. So I'm thinking, okay, let's look at these coordinators. Well, yes, offensive coordinator at Oregon would be an impressive thing. However, he's never been a head coach. And Womack has. And Womack's the defensive guy, and I've been hearing all along that Yurachek wanted to hire a defensive guy because of the problems we've had on defense. And then throw in the fact that he's an ex-Razorback. He was here under Houston Nutt, played at Fayetteville High School. His dad was the defensive coordinator here, so he's got a history with this school. And then I called up a guy that knows him and spent about 30 minutes listening to him talk about Womack. He said, let me tell you something. He gets this job, here's what he's going to do. He's going to come in here, and he's going to start bringing the Arkansas people back into the program. And here's how it happens. Next year, you don't have walk-ons anymore. You're going from 85 scholarships to 105. And he said he's going to take those extra positions, and instead of having walk-ons, he's going to give scholarships to in-state kids that we wouldn't normally recruit, because there might be 3 or 4 of them in 2 or 3 years that could help you, and the rest of them are going to be leaders. And they're going to be in that locker room, and he's going to tell them, you're here to make all these other people understand what being a Razorback is. You won't have a problem going to Austin and trying to tell all these guys, hey, this Texas game is a bigger deal. And a guy that's never played here is going, what are you talking about? Well, this is a big rivalry. We hate these guys. Well, I don't hate them. Well, you got to learn to hate them. So if you got a guy in the locker room, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 of them telling you that every day, then maybe it can make a difference. Then he said, here's what he will do as a defensive coordinator. He absolutely refuses to accept a lack of effort. You will come prepared. You will correct your mistakes, and you will be expected to correct your mistakes. And if you don't come around, you won't play and you won't be on the team. And so let's look at what he's done. They're very happy with him. Alabama is second in the SEC in defense right now, second. Arkansas 16th. So, yes, you'd be dealing with different
Arkansas
players.
126 in the country. There's
Yeah,
only 133
absolutely
teams.
horrible. They're giving up 16 points a game there, and when you look at some of their games this year, it wasn't defense that caused them, Alabama some problems, it was offense. So they're very happy with him. So all of that is good. But let me tell you something, Trey. If they introduce him as the next head coach, what do you think all these people are going to do that have been going, we're going to get a big name guy and we're going to spend money?
I think there will be a collective sigh and a big disappointment.
They will be going.
And they need to sell tickets.
That's right. So what are you going to do then? You're going to have a bunch of people going, you duped us again. And it's going to fall right on top of Hunter Yurichek's head. It's just going to be one more thing where they're going. And so maybe it's not. But if it is him, even if he turns out to be the best guy, because in 3 years from now, if he takes the job, we may look back on it and go, boy, wow, what a hire. Because sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But initially, I'm telling you, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff on the internet of, oh gosh, we got duped again.
All right, more to come here on Ask Mike. A lot to get into when it comes to the Arkansas Razorbacks. Don't go away. We got a quick timeout. Back here on Ask Mike, time to wrap things up. Final block here of the show. Next question coming from Lady Hogtalica. Shout out to that name. Big Metallica fan. Gotta love the metal, right? I hear that the powers that be are concerned about the fan base's reaction to the new hire. What steps are they looking to take in order to acclimate the fan base to the new hire? It's been rough. Look, Hogtalica here is basically like, hey, brace yourself. You guys are not going to be happy. So maybe she knows something.
I know exactly what they're going to do because I've been there before. Here's what's going to happen. Hunter Yurichek's going to get up there and he's going to talk about all the reasons why he hired this guy. And we're going to learn everything.
And probably say this was our number one choice. We got our guy.
Oh, man, you just jumped off the page at me. I knew all along. We wanted to be thorough. We looked at a whole lot of people. And, hey, we looked at some people that were really big time. But this was our guy. So then you're going to have that. Then the coach is going to get up there. And he is going to say all this stuff. He's going to talk about his system and how much he wants to be at Arkansas, and he's going to convince everybody this is the place to be, just like when Sam Pittman was hired. And then what's going to happen is he's going to get asked a bunch of questions, and he's going to have to answer the questions. And if he does a good job of that, that's good. But we will all be evaluating him on how he answers the questions. And then this starts. And this is interesting because the first thing, if he's smart, if he knows what he's doing, we will get access to the winter conditioning program because a lack of football in January and February is kind of like, come on, give us some football.
Yeah.
Well, they shut it off.
Something to show some progress.
Shut it off. I mean, all these coaches have shut it off.
I think the university shut it off. I don't think Pittman did. Because when Pittman left, it's not like any access has changed at Petrino. But anyways, I digress.
It was shut off. That's my whole point. Now, here's what you can do with the winter conditioning program. And they did do some things. They used Hog Plus to show some things and make it better. But if you let the media come in there, you let them, the winter conditioning program is the worst thing you go through because you get no feedback from anybody. You just got coaches yelling at you, mostly the conditioning coaches. And you're lifting weights and you're running and people are screaming at you and you're indoors and it stinks out. It's cold outside and you hate it. And you want to get outside, but you can't. So you go through it. Well, if you got media people in there and you're getting interviewed and they're putting stories on, that at least sort of tells people, hey, there's some cool stuff going on here. Then you got spring football. Okay, what are you going to do in the spring? Is it going to be good? Do you have a theme? Yeah, look at how good our defense is. Mm-hmm. Well, if you do that, what about the offense? That must mean the offense stinks. So you got to balance that. And are we going to actually have a spring game? Because what did Sam Pittman say? We can't have spring games anymore because people will see how good our coaches, our players are. They'll steal them out of the transfer portal. But I think that's all gone because I don't think there's a post-spring portal anymore. So you'll see that. Then if they let you come up in the summer and show those summer workouts when nothing is going on. Oh, here's football and look at this guy and look at that guy. Then August camp, this guy, that guy, this. So you can promote the fool out of this. But guess what? The only thing that matters is that first game of the year next year. This is when you're going to start deciding whether this guy can coach or not.
Which I think could potentially be, with 9 games, that could potentially be an SEC game. I haven't looked at the schedule close enough, but I think it's possible.
The point is, you're going to find out real fast then if this guy can coach or not. And the fans will judge him very, very quickly. So that's how they will sell it to us. But you can sell all you want to. Our fans have been through this so many times, they know none of that other stuff means anything. What matters is when you line up to play the game.
Yeah, you got to get the results. All the other stuff is just window dressing. You have to get the results. Next question here coming from Marty Bird's Proxy, who says, it's almost a certainty now that we'll have a new coach and staff in place for next season. Next season, yeah, they will. Maybe even as soon as next week even. How will players who didn't play this year be evaluated? Will someone be retained to assist with transition? Look, at just as a note here, there's going to be a lot of turnover. That's just how this works. The transfer portal now, about half this roster is going to be gone, maybe even more than half.
You typically will have a grad assistant or two, or maybe an analyst. Every once in a while, depending on how the interviews go with the existing staff, they might decide to keep a guy. I've been told there's a defensive backs coach here. Our defensive backs are
probably Nick Perry.
Yeah, he might be retained. He's that well thought of.
Mateos' offensive line, he may be sought after.
Maybe, I don't know. I think I was told they're all going to be gone, but somebody will be there.
You're right. Usually, Tim Horton was for Petrino.
Yeah.
Was it Taver Johnson stay with Bielema? Usually there's always a holdover.
Somebody will be there, and then that person will be in charge of telling them, okay, this guy, that guy, they're going to start looking at video of people. Then they're going to start calling people in. Some of the players may not even want to be called in. I'm transferring. Okay. Maybe if you don't feel like you have to talk a guy into staying, you go, okay, well, good luck. Some of these guys will go through interviews with the coaches, and then it's a natural process. And in the end, especially with the way this stuff works today, expect half the roster to be gone, maybe more.
100%. This is just what happens. With the transfer portal, you're allowed to do this. They want their players, and especially if they hire a mid-major coach, which a lot of these North Texas, their rosters are now made up of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors primarily. And then those players get picked over by the power jobs. So theoretically, there could be a path where there's a big influx of talent if it is somebody like a Silverfield or an Eric Morris or a Bob Chesney. What insert name here?
Morris got one of the top freshman quarterbacks in the country. He's got one of the top receivers in the country. He's got one of the top running backs. And a really good defensive player. I can't remember whether he's a linebacker or whatever, but he's got some players he could bring in. Well, that's attractive if you can do that. So just get used to it. There's a lot of these guys that'll be gone, and to be honest with you, there have been fans say get rid of all of them. I think that's a mistake. You don't just automatically get rid of everybody.
Even just look at the turnover they had from 1 year ago.
There's a kid named Monty Harrison that everybody's forgotten about. He's 30 years old now.
Former baseball player, yeah.
And I still think he's going to be a factor, and I would be surprised if he left. He's just stuck around. He's getting his degree, and he's a leader, and I would like to see him next year as a wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, he's made his money, even pro baseball player there briefly. Had a little bit of run here at the end of the year before the injury played for. Hey, he's utilized the pro system for what it has been, and that's all the transfer portal stuff. The roster turnover, not Bob Chesney, he's currently at James Madison. Curt Cignetti, the former James Madison coach who Bob Chesney replaced. This happened in Indiana. I think he took 13 or 14 players with him. A lot of those guys were sophomores and juniors. And look what Indiana is now. Number 2 in the country, 11-1 year one. Yeah. Usually really hard to get instant buy-in, instant turnover, but he kind of found a way. Now, Curt Cignetti, a fantastic coach. Arkansas is going to have to hit a home run, something like that, to get that quick and that type of a turnaround. Next question here coming from Hog Dogger, who says, I'm thinking it may have been a bad look for our AD to be on TV with ESPN discussing non-related Razorback issues with our basketball team is fighting for a win. Might have should have been supporting the team at Bud Walton instead. I think optically it could just be bad. Hey, you're going through a coaching search, and I know this only adds like an extra hour on your week to be the committee chair or whatever because he was already on the committee. But still, optics, I could see why it rubbed people the wrong way.
I think the real problem with that is what he said when he emerged from the meeting. That's what people...
The Miami-Notre Dame thing, yeah.
Yeah, because it was almost like he didn't really grasp what was happening around. He made a lot of Miami people mad. He made some other people, Alabama people mad. So that was I mean, I was reading some of that stuff. You got fans all over the country that are now, who's this AD at Arkansas, and what is he doing? What's wrong with this guy? And he sort of, if he was guilty of anything, he probably was guilty of coming out there and being honest about what they're talking about. And I don't know that you want to tell them some of the processes. If you're really worried more about good losses than head-to-head wins, your process is a little flawed. Don't tell anybody about that if that's what you're going to do. He didn't do a very good job of just saying nothing. Yeah. He said too much.
All right, next question here coming from Cajun Hog, who asks, you said Cal schedules no teams with good players and good coaches to test his players this time of year. What did they get out of playing Jackson State? Because that team was terrible.
Well, it got Carter Knox going again, and that's important. Mm-hmm. If somebody's in a little bit of a slump, I don't care who you're playing, it gives them more confidence. But I think Malik Ewing was the big one because he had done nothing. And so what they're doing in that game is they're feeding him the basketballs. You could tell Cal said, get the ball to him, the guards, the forwards, or the wings or whatever. Get him the ball. He scored 21 points in 14 minutes of playing time. That's production. Now, here's the thing. Now, you're playing somebody really good coming up, right?
Okay, in back-to-back, I think it's Duke and Louisville in back-to-back games. Both those teams are in the top 6.
So here's the deal. Does that translate? Does Ewing come out of his shell now and play well against them, or was it just he did that really well against a really bad Jackson State defense? We're not going to know until it happens. But I'm still glad that it happened. But that's what you need to look for because I think he's got to score 7, 8 points, not 2, in this Duke game.
Yeah, it's going to be a marquee game for Arkansas. It's going to be a great litmus test to see exactly where they are. I want to go back to that Winthrop game 1 week ago. That was way too close for comfort. But let's be fair here. It's basketball. It's a different sport by the nature. They made 15 3-pointers. You can have a little bit of off night. It's not as simple as like, hey, we're better, we should kill them. That night, you're a little bit off, you could lose. You think we'll look back on that game and say, uh-oh, there were the cracks in the armor?
Could be.
Or will we look back in that game and be like, hey, they fought to the finish, down 5 points, a minute to go. They found a way to win. That's what sparked their season.
Could go either way on that. I'm not sure.
Do you find anything in that game that kind of rubbed you the wrong way? I don't think guys were wide open in that game, but, man, they gave up a lot of 3-pointers.
I just felt like the inside players didn't compete. I didn't feel like they were rebounding well. I didn't think they were aggressive enough. And then maybe your 2 freshman guards are too much about themselves. They gotta factor in with everybody else. Yeah. But I don't want to criticize those 2 guys too much because they're going to need them. They're going to need their talent to win games in the SEC, especially on the road.
And I loved what I saw from Nick Pringle there, the game-winning layup, and that guy doing that.
Oh.
A dirty play. You watch the replay. You know exactly what he was doing. That's how a player should respond. Defend yourself, show accountability, not going to let anybody – no, I don't want to hear this, be the bigger man. He handled it the way he should have. You do not do that to somebody. That was a dirty play, and that kid deserved whatever he got or was coming to him. You can't do that stuff. That's letting the emotions of the game get to him on the Winthrop side. All right, final question of the week here, coming from KY Hogg, who says, it's 5 games into the season, and I don't know what to think. So far, they aren't as good as I thought they would be, but Kentucky isn't either, and that makes me happy. Still time to get better, right?
Well, you're going to find out very quickly now. Yeah, you have all these games, and you're not sure, blah, blah, blah. You're going to be sure now. I think they've got 7 games until the first SEC game, so 7 games left. And 4 of them are against ranked teams. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good test. Now you're going to find out. Now you're going to find out, did he do the things in these first games to get him ready for this stretch? Because that stretch is going to be very similar to what happens to you when you're in the SEC.
All right, Mike Irwin, Ask Mike, all done. This time next week, we will be back, and we could be talking about a real new football coach
again,
at the University of Arkansas.
If it's not John Gruden, this is what I'm going to say when I find out who this coach is. I'm going to go on Twitter or X, and I'm going to go, hey, it's not John Gruden. It's never been John Gruden. It will never be John Gruden. Not next year, not 10 years from now. Even if Gruden's 85 years old, he will never coach here. That's what I want to be able to say.
Maybe if we have a time machine or something, it'll be John Gruden. There's a a member out there that says he knows and he can't tell. And I get that you got to protect the story. I'd like a grand experiment. This person should write the name, put it in an envelope, put a piece of tape on it, put it in the desk, and then whenever they announce the coach, let's see him open the envelope and see if the name
if he's right.
matches who we got. It would be a great experiment. I'm sure it'd be great for that guy's brand. And if he wasn't wrong, or if he was wrong, maybe he would kind of own up to it. All right. He's Mike Irwin. I'm Trey Dare. Thank you so much for joining us in this week's Ask Mike.